When I set out to write 1 million words in 1 year, it sounded like a lofty goal to some of the people I mentioned it to. But here's a secret. My goal is not to write 1 million words. The Million Words Project isn't a goal, really. It's a tool I'm using to reach my goals. Stick around and I'll explain what I mean. Welcome to the Million Words Project update for week 5. We are wrapping up the first full month and we have a big milestone to celebrate after 5 weeks. I'm Eric Sheridan Wyatt, author, writing instructor, and creativity coach. I've challenged myself to write 1 million words in 12 months. Each week I'm going to give an update on my progress and share some of the ups and downs of this challenge. Along the way, I'll share some of the things that I'm learning and still learning about my writing life. My hope is that these videos will ignite your creativity, light your entrepreneurial fire, or otherwise inspire you to take on a challenge, that big thing you've been putting on the back burner for too long. I believe small steps lead to big results. So let's start this week's journey. Week 5 was a solid effort, coming in a little more than 2,000 words ahead of the weekly pace of 20,000 words. If we start with the graphs, you'll see I added some new graphical representations to the mix. I'm still playing with how I use the data I'm collecting to best effect, but I'm trying to figure out which of these forms I like. On the lower left, you can see my weekly performance versus the steady target pace of 20,000 words a week. And on the bottom right, a comparison of the overall cumulative pace versus actual words written. After 5 weeks, I'm about 11,000 words ahead of the million words pace. But you may notice I've hit my first celebratory milestone, 100,000 words this week. I took a minute to celebrate and did a little dance around the home office. Don't worry, I didn't film my dance, so you won't have to avert your eyes. But 100,000 is a solid start and progress towards the successful completion of this challenge. So it was good to take a minute and celebrate the small win. Moving on to look at the numbers in a little more detail, the distribution of the words is quite a bit different from previous weeks. I'd like to discuss that for just a minute. A typical journaling week for me is between 4,200 and 4,500 words. Sometimes I write more in my morning pages and sometimes less, but on average for the last dozen years or so, I've written about 750 words a day, 6 days a week. Monitoring my journaling habits is an important barometer of my overall creative health. Having 1 week below 3,500 words is not a big red flag, but I know when I go for long stretches with low journaling counts, something's probably wrong internally. This week, my daily routine was interrupted for 4 days, and that contributed to this dip in journaling, at least partly. It was one of those sometimes life throws you a curveball instances where I ended up driving to Lexington and back 4 times when I had anticipated 0 trips to Lexington. Sometimes life happens. If we skip down to the life document total for week 5, we see a significant dip in that number. As I said in prior weeks, the higher than anticipated totals I've had in that column have been mostly circumstantial, and I'm attempting to rebalance the overall word totals to something closer to my idealized balance. Going back to the nonfiction and platform column, we see a lot of the words that had been in the life document column in the past have now found their way into a couple of nonfiction projects that I worked on this week, which is good. I needed to redistribute some of the energy. We're going to skip over that big ugly 0 in the fiction column for 1 more week. At least, I hope it's just 1 more week, because I actually have some big things brewing in the fiction front. They just haven't bubbled up into new words written yet. I also had some work to do for a client who I'm ghostwriting for, and that is reflected in the 500 words that were logged in the client projects column. Now, I actually spent many hours on this client's project this week, giving it 2 rounds of revisions and a line edit. But I only added one small brand new section, and the point of this Million Words project is to track my production of new words or new writing. So revision and editing don't count towards these totals. Now, revision and editing are both very much an important part of writing, but that's not what I'm tracking here. I'm only tracking one very narrow, very specific aspect of my writing and creative life. In fact, that's a good segue to this week's My goal as a writer is not to write 1 million words. That may seem strange considering I have a whole video series called The Million Words Project, in which I give updates about my progress in this challenge to, write 1 million words. And if you've seen earlier episodes, you probably caught me saying that I have a goal of writing 1 million words in 1 year, on more than one occasion. But the truth is, this Million Words Project is a tool that I'm using to help me reach toward several actual goals. The million words are not the end product. They're just a way for me to monitor my ongoing progress in one specific area, writing new words. This is important for 2 reasons. First, if you saw the earlier episodes, you know that I was struggling with the idea that I wasn't writing enough, and what writing I was doing wasn't focused in the right areas. Tracking my new words written helps me debunk that false narrative, and it helps me make decisions about how I am balancing my creative life. Second, and this is equally important, many of my personal, creative, and professional goals, the goals that really matter to me, that have meaning, that I am pursuing with purpose, require me to write new essays, new books, new scripts, and new teaching materials. All of those things require me to write new words. Given these 2 reasons, I wanted to come up with a way to encourage myself to write new words and have something approaching a balanced plan of attack. I decided I would use some very uncreative methods to spur my creativity. If you've ever spent much time in a professional business environment, you've likely heard of concepts like task tracking and activity logging and phrases like time on task or prioritizing workflow. For big projects, there's a concept of reverse engineering the project, where you start with the ideal end result and then work backward to construct a timeline, waypoints, mini goals, etc. So I started with my end goals in mind and began to work backward, trying to find action steps that would propel me towards completion. In this case, I knew I needed to write more words more often and write with specific projects in mind. I needed to generate hundreds of thousands of words to write the essays and books and other projects I want to complete, which led me to the idea of setting a weekly mini goal for new words written. That gave me something to keep track of and a way to measure progress week to week. I played around with several ideas, but I knew from studying goal setting that I wanted my mini goals to be aggressive but reachable. I wanted to encourage myself to actually make solid progress, but I didn't want to make it so hard that I would fail on a regular basis. How many words per week then? I've been writing a long time. I know how long it takes me to write different kinds of materials and how sometimes things really kick into high gear and other times every single word is a slog. I know that my most productive week ever, I wrote 45,000 words in 7 days. That's about 6,500 words a day. But I also know how rare that sort of flow state is. The most I've written in one single day was about 10,000 words. But that day I spent 14 hours writing in total. Again, that sort of sustained flow is super rare, at least for me. I knew averaging 2,000 words per day was on the low side. 5 days a week, that's only 10,000 words a week. So I said to myself, what about 20,000 words per week? That sounds like a solid, challenging, but not overwhelming number, given my past experience. Doing some quick math, I realized that 20,000 words per week would give me somewhere around 1,040,000 words. And I said to myself, Give yourself 2 weeks off and you have 1,000,000 words. That seemed catchy. 1,000,000 words. What a fun challenge. And thus, the 1,000,000 Words Project was born. Why do I tell you all of this? Do I think you should start your own 1,000,000 Words Project? Yes and no. Of course, if you want to set a 1,000,000 word challenge for yourself, by all means. If it fits your bigger goals, then absolutely do it. Join me in the fun. The more the merrier. But what I'm actually hoping my description of the birth of the 1,000,000 Words Project will do is encourage you to consider how you can reverse engineer your own big goals, given your own skills and abilities, and considering the roadblocks, hurdles, and pitfalls you either may experience or are already sidetracked by. The principles I'm sharing with you are applicable to whatever your big thing is. Unlike my big thing, which requires a lot of writing, your big thing may not require you to write 1,000,000 words or hundreds of thousands of words in the next 3 to 5 years. But you can start to identify measurable, actionable baby steps that will get you closer to your desired end result. And one last concept I want to share with you. There have been times in the past when I've been in a creative funk that I've done what I call a ramp-up goal setting. This is a stair-step approach. For the 1,000,000 Words Project, I was already in a place where writing 20,000 new words in a week on a consistent basis would be a little bit of a stretch, but not impossible. However, if I had been at rock bottom and not writing at all, I could have done a ramp-up method where I would spend 2 weeks with a 10,000 word target, and then 2 more with a 15,000 word target, and then move up to 20,000 words a week. I've done this sort of stair-step method with any number of getting back on track tasks over the years, and it can be an effective way to go from 0 to a steady pace. Perhaps your challenge will be something like spending 10 hours a week painting, and maybe for the first few weeks you'll set a smaller threshold of 4 hours and then increase it to 8 and then step up to 10. Whatever metric you decide on, make sure it is achievable but not too easy. Challenge yourself to make more progress. Decide what it is you want to measure and how you'll track it, so you know when you're making progress and when you might need to light the fire to get more done. And then start keeping track so you have the data you need to reach for your big thing. There is a funny but true quote attributed to Lily Tomlin, the comedian. She said, "I always wanted to be somebody. I should have been more specific." It seems counterintuitive to impose structure on your creative tasks. We like to believe creativity comes from inspiration and freedom and a lack of restraint. And on one level, that's very true. But taking a creative idea or unique concept or innovative thought and putting it into a form that is useful to you and to others takes actual work. What is true for me, both in my personal writing and in my fiction writing, is this. I am more likely to feel the lightning strike of creativity and inspiration if I am actively engaged in the things that at least approach the end result I'm hoping to achieve. If I'm actively pursuing my big thing, I am much more likely to someday catch it. Imposing structure is, for me, my effort to be more specific about the creative somebody I want to be. Deciding what to track and how to measure your progress isn't always an easy thing to do. But finding a way to encourage yourself to consistently chip away at your big thing and then give yourself the data to adjust your creative practices and improve your work, it's a key component to progress. The challenge goal isn't the end result. It's a piece of the bigger puzzle. For me, my real goal is not to just write 1,000,000 words. Writing new words is an important aspect of the work I want to accomplish in the next 5, 10, maybe even 20 more years, God willing. But the 1,000,000 word challenge is what I need now to help me move the needle and get me closer to those things I most want to accomplish. The objective is to create more, not just check off a box that I did something or hit a target for this week. The challenge is simply a tool that propels me forward. As we wrap up the video update today, let me give you a couple of points to ponder. First, ask yourself, what are the key behaviors that you have to exhibit in order to realize your big thing? Maybe you're a photographer, so taking pictures would be one of those behaviors. Learning to edit photos and print them might be another. Practicing using lights or filters or other photo gizmos might be part of your process. Second, when you've identified some of those key behaviors necessary for whatever artistic or creative pursuit you want to achieve, assess your strengths and weaknesses. What parts of the process are you naturally more inclined toward than others? What areas are lacking? A good way to think of this is to finish the sentence, wouldn't it be great if, in relationship to your big thing? Wouldn't it be great if I could do X? Wouldn't it be great if Y happened? Finally, if you can identify areas that are keeping you stuck and not pursuing your dream, ask yourself if there's a way to break that behavior down into something you can measure and track, and if there's a way to challenge yourself into action. That's all for week 5. I might have been a little long-winded this week. If you made it this far, I'm hoping that means you got something useful out of this video. For independent artists and creators like myself, it's really important that our viewers interact with our content. That allows the artificial intelligence overlords to figure out if this video resonated with you. And then they'll be more likely to share it with others. So if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, and all the good things. You can engage in the comments section, ask a question, give a rebuttal to my ramblings, or offer some encouragement. It's all very much appreciated. And most importantly, if you know someone in your life who might benefit from this video series, send them a link and invite them to join us, won't you? Sharing is caring. You can find information about me, Eric Sheridan Wyatt, and my books in the show notes. If you are joining this video series partway through, and you want to know what it is that's going on here, who I am and what the Million Words Project is all about, you'll find a link to the first episode which can answer some of those questions. Until next time, remember, your words matter. Make them count.